Rain pounded against the windows of a cramped hotel room in Hong Kong. The curtains were drawn tight, the lights dim. A man sat at the edge of the bed, laptop open, his face lit by the glow of encrypted chat windows. His name: Edward Snowden. Age: 29. Occupation: systems analyst. Employer: the United States National Security Agency. And in that moment, he was about to change the world. For months, Snowden had been collecting classified documents, thousands of files that revealed the scale of government surveillance across the globe. Programs that tracked calls, emails, messages, even private data from tech companies Americans trusted every day. Now, sitting alone in that humid room, he was preparing to hand them over to journalists. What he held wasn't just information. It was evidence of a hidden architecture of control, built in the name of security, but stretching far beyond it. He typed one last message. "This will be the biggest leak in NSA history." Then he hit send. Far away in Washington, the early summer morning was quiet. Inside the NSA's Fort Meade headquarters, the hum of machines never stopped. Analysts stared at cascading streams of data on massive screens. Keywords, geolocations, metadata, all feeding into a network so vast it could map the digital pulse of the world. When the first reports appeared online, stories from The Guardian and The Washington Post, a wave of unease spread through those halls. Someone inside had turned on them. The articles were explosive. Prism, X-key score, boundless informant. Words that meant little to the public, but everything to intelligence officials. Each name pointed to programs capable of intercepting and storing nearly all global communications. The NSA wasn't just spying on foreign enemies, it was collecting information from its own citizens. At the White House, the tone was urgent. Briefings ran late into the night. President Obama demanded to know how such vast troves of data had slipped out unnoticed. Intelligence chiefs scrambled to identify the source. Within hours, suspicion narrowed. An IT contractor in Hawaii. A young man who had suddenly taken medical leave, vanished, and left behind an encrypted trail. Snowden knew they'd find him. He'd prepared for it. But he wasn't hiding. He wanted the world to know who he was and why he did it. "I'm not afraid," he told Glenn Greenwald, one of the journalists he'd contacted. "I just want people to understand what's being done in their name." The meeting took place in the Mira Hotel, a luxury tower in the middle of chaotic Hong Kong. Greenwald and filmmaker Laura Poitras recorded the interview. Snowden appeared calm, focused, but every sound outside made him glance toward the door. The hum of air conditioning mixed with the muted city noise below, creating a strange sense of isolation. He explained how he'd worked his way through the intelligence system. First at the CIA, then with Dell, and finally Booz Allen Hamilton, a contractor for the NSA. With high-level clearance, he accessed internal databases that few others could touch. What he found disturbed him deeply. Mass surveillance wasn't a rumor. It was policy. The government had quietly built tools to capture almost everything. Emails, webcam feeds, browser histories. "They're watching everyone," he said quietly. "All the time." When The Guardian released his identity days later, the world erupted. Edward Snowden, a government contractor turned whistleblower, accused of the most significant intelligence leak in American history. Some called him a traitor, others, a hero. Cable networks ran wall-to-wall coverage. His face, young, pale, expressionless, became a symbol of rebellion and fear. U.S. officials condemned him. The Department of Justice prepared charges under the Espionage Act, and as the hunt for him began, Snowden disappeared into the maze of Hong Kong's backstreets. Behind the headlines, the leaks kept coming. Documents revealed that the NSA had tapped into fiber optic cables, collected billions of phone records, and spied on world leaders, including German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Even close allies were targets. The American public, once largely trusting of post-9/11 security measures, began to question what safety really meant. In Congress, lawmakers faced an uncomfortable choice: defend the surveillance state or admit it had gone too far. Heated hearings followed. Former NSA Director Keith Alexander insisted the programs had prevented attacks. "We do not target Americans without cause," he declared before the cameras. But leaked memos told another story. Mistakes had occurred, millions of times. Private citizens swept up, data stored indefinitely, all in secret. Meanwhile, Snowden was running out of time. The U.S. government revoked his passport and pressured Hong Kong to hand him over. He boarded a flight to Moscow intending to connect to Ecuador or Cuba, but the plan collapsed mid-route. Russia refused to let him continue. For weeks, he lived inside Sheremetyevo Airport's transit zone, alone, under constant watch, surrounded by journalists and security agents. The irony wasn't lost on him. A man who exposed surveillance, now trapped in the heart of another intelligent state. "Do you regret it?" a reporter once asked through the glass. Snowden just smiled faintly. "No. I regret that it was necessary." As the standoff dragged on, global debate deepened. Some nations hailed him as a defender of privacy. Others accused him of endangering national security. American intelligence scrambled to assess the damage. Behind closed doors, analysts worked around the clock to trace what had been taken. The files, over 1.5 million documents, covered not only NSA operations, but also those of the CIA, GCHQ, and even Australia's Signals Directorate. Every partner in the Five Eyes alliance had been exposed. Back in Washington, the political response grew sharper. "He's no whistleblower," said Secretary of State John Kerry on live television. "He's a fugitive from justice." Yet outside government circles, a different movement was forming. Protesters carried signs reading, "Thank you, Snowden." Civil rights groups demanded reform. Months later, the world watched as Snowden appeared via video link at the Sam Adams Award ceremony in Moscow. He looked older, more tired, but resolute. "The truth is coming," he told the crowd, "and it cannot be stopped." In the United States, reforms began slowly. The Freedom Act was passed in 2015, ending the bulk collection of domestic phone records. For the first time in decades, the power of intelligence agencies was publicly questioned. Still, the debate remained divided. Inside the NSA, morale dropped. Agents whispered about the contractor from Hawaii who had cracked open their secrets. Some saw him as a traitor who'd endangered lives. Others quietly admitted he'd forced the country to face a truth it had ignored for too long. Snowden stayed in Moscow under temporary asylum, later extended indefinitely. His days became routine, coding, reading, giving remote talks. Far from the life he once had, but free in a different sense. The price of conscience was exile. Years passed, but the echo of his actions lingered. Each new revelation, from Cambridge Analytica to Pegasus spyware, seemed to validate his warning. Privacy, once lost, is almost impossible to regain. When asked what drove him, he once said, "If I didn't act, no one would, and I couldn't live with that." The Snowden case didn't end with his escape. It became a mirror, reflecting every government's struggle between freedom and control, security and transparency. It revealed that even democracies could slip into secrecy when fear took hold. Tonight, in Fort Meade, the servers still hum. Somewhere deep within, encrypted archives hold the ghosts of old programs, shelved but not forgotten. And across the ocean, in a quiet Moscow apartment, Edward Snowden sits by a window, watching the snow fall against the glass. The city outside is silent. The world moves on. But the question he forced humanity to face still lingers in the static of every intercepted signal. Who watches the watchers?